The sound of the phone call was like an electric jolt to my system, ripping through the silence of my hotel room. "You really think you deserve that money?" Claire's voice, dripping with satisfaction, echoed in my ears. My grip tightened around the edge of the desk, the wood digging into my palms as my heart began to race. Claire's words cut through me like knives, each syllable aimed to wound, to remind me that in her eyes, I was nothing more than an obstacle. "That trust fund belongs to Olivia now. She's the one who deserves it, not you." I stood still, my breath shallow, trying to steady the storm brewing inside me. "Thanks for letting me know," I said calmly, my voice as steady as a calm sea on the surface. But deep inside, the anger was a tidal wave waiting to break free. I knew she was waiting for something more from me, tears, begging, anger, but she would get none of it. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Claire's smirk was audible, and I could almost hear her disappointment. "That's it?" she asked, her tone laced with confusion. "You don't even care? Is there anything else?" I replied coolly, forcing myself to breathe. There was nothing left to say. Not yet, because what she didn't know was that I was ready. I wasn't the same person I had been all those years ago. I had learned to play the game, and Claire had no idea what was coming. I had always believed I could escape it, the constant tension, the manipulations, the feeling of being trapped in a world where I didn't belong. But the truth is, you can't run from your past forever. My name is Emma Thomas, and at 28, I thought I had finally built a life far from the toxicity that had defined my family for so long. A career in pharmaceutical sales, endless flights across the country, meeting clients, closing deals, everything was moving along perfectly. The only thing I needed to focus on was tomorrow's meeting in Chicago. Another Tuesday, just another day at work. But then, the phone rang, and just like that, the past I had worked so hard to escape came crashing back into my life. I've never been the type to let family drama define me. I lost my mother when I was just 16. Cancer took her, leaving behind a legacy that she worked her entire life to build, a business that was her pride, her vision. She left me a trust fund, a piece of that legacy, so that I could follow my dreams. But I never imagined that I would spend years dodging Claire, my stepmother, and her incessant attempts to get her hands on that very trust. After my mother's passing, my dad seemed desperate to fill the void. He remarried Claire just 2 years later, and with her came Olivia, my stepsister, who was just 13 at the time. The tension between Claire and me was immediate. I had no room for her selfishness, and she had no intention of letting me keep what my mom left for me. Every day felt like walking on eggshells, and Claire's favorite pastime was making sure my achievements went unnoticed. Olivia was always the one to shine. My graduation, my scholarship to business school, it was as if Claire had a hand in erasing every moment of my success. All while praising Olivia for the smallest of wins. But I wasn't going to let that keep me down. The truth is, while Claire thought she could push me to the side, I had learned from the best. My mother had built an empire with grit and determination, and I had inherited that same fire. The trust fund wasn't just money, it was a symbol of my mother's love, her sacrifice, and her belief in me. And though Claire tried to steal it away, I knew I was smarter than that. Before I share what happened next, the moment that changed everything and finally exposed Claire for who she really was, I want to connect with you. My amazing viewers, where are you watching from? Drop your country's flag in the comments below. And if you've ever had to fight for something you believe in, hit that like button, because this story is just getting started. For years, Claire had been chipping away at me, a little at a time, with her constant barbs and manipulation. It wasn't always obvious, but the more I think about it, the more I realize how expertly she worked behind the scenes, all while wearing the mask of a loving stepmother. Every time I walked into a room, it was like I was the invisible one, the one who wasn't truly part of the family. Claire's manipulations weren't always overt. She knew how to play the long game, making sure my dad saw only what she wanted him to see. Every accomplishment of mine went unnoticed, overshadowed by Olivia's every move. A perfect example? My college graduation. I had worked my ass off to finish at the top of my class, balancing work and school, pouring every ounce of my energy into building a future. But when the big day arrived, my dad couldn't be there. Not because of work or a legitimate reason, but because Olivia had a minor cold. She needs her father right now, Claire had insisted, never missing a chance to tear me down. She knew just how to make me feel small, how to make me question my place. Your mother would have wanted you to share the inheritance with Olivia, she would say, pushing the guilt, always trying to plant the idea that I was selfish for wanting to keep what was rightfully mine. But it wasn't just the small things. It was the constant undermining. The way she made sure I doubted myself. The way she twisted every situation to fit her narrative. She didn't see my hard work, she only saw a threat. And Olivia, well, she was her pawn, always the victim. Always needing saving, even when there was no reason to. I could see right through it. Though, I wasn't the naive girl I had been when my mom first died. I had learned from the best, my mother. She had taught me how to stand strong in the face of adversity. How to protect what was mine. Claire might have thought she was getting away with it. But I had been watching. Waiting. Preparing for the day when the truth would finally come out. And that day was closer than Claire could ever imagine. I wasn't about to let Claire get away with it. I had spent too many years living in her shadow, allowing her to twist the narrative, to make me feel like I was somehow the villain in my own story. But I wasn't that girl anymore. I wasn't going to let her strip me of my mother's legacy, of everything my mom had worked so hard to build. 6 months ago, when I first got wind of Claire's plans, I knew it was time to stop playing her game. I reached out to Mr. Lawson, my mother's lawyer, a man who had known my mother's business better than anyone. We had a conversation, and I made it clear, this time, Claire wasn't going to get away with her manipulation. We set up safeguards, putting legal protections in place that Claire could never have anticipated. The beauty of it was that Claire didn't know about the precautions. She thought she could access the trust fund without any consequences. She was too arrogant to realize I had already covered every angle. Every phone call she made, every email she sent trying to manipulate the bank, it was all being logged. Documented. I was waiting for the moment when it all came to a head. And when Claire finally made her move, it wasn't a surprise to me. What came next was more like a confirmation of everything I had been preparing for. I sat in my hotel room, my fingers gripping the phone as I dialed Mr. Lawson's number. He answered immediately, his voice steady and reassuring. Claire made her move, I said, cutting straight to the point. She says she transferred everything to Olivia. I need to know, did she? Mr. Lawson's calm voice echoed through the phone. We've been tracking her every attempt. I got an alert this morning about her accessing the account. But don't worry, Emma, the security measures we put in place worked perfectly. Nothing has been transferred. Not a penny. I let out a breath I didn't realize I had been holding. The weight that had been pressing down on me for years. The constant fear that Claire would finally win. It began to lift. This was it. This was the moment I had been waiting for. He continued, and we've got her on attempted fraud. Every action she took has been documented. And it's airtight. Would you like me to proceed with the next steps? I didn't hesitate. Yes. It's time to end this. I closed my laptop. The weight of everything I had been through finally starting to ease. Claire thought she had the upper hand. But she was wrong. I had been 2 steps ahead the entire time. It was no longer about keeping the trust fund. It was about making sure she paid for everything she had done. I had my proof. I had my victory. And Claire was going to find out just how far I was willing to go to protect what was mine. I boarded the flight back home the next morning, my heart pounding with a mix of anticipation and cold resolve. The quiet hum of the plane was a stark contrast to the storm brewing inside me. My father hadn't seen me in months. And though I had called ahead to tell him I was coming, I hadn't mentioned the real reason for my return. This conversation needed to happen face to face. As the plane touched down in Boston, I felt the weight of everything I had been carrying for years pressing down on me. The city hadn't changed much. But I had learned to fight for myself. To stop letting others take what was rightfully mine. I drove to my dad's house. The same house I grew up in. But it felt different this time. When I walked through the front door, everything seemed strangely familiar, and yet foreign. There they were, Claire, my father, and Olivia. sitting together in the living room as if nothing had ever changed. I stood at the threshold, my gaze steady and unflinching. Claire's eyes locked onto mine, and for a moment, I saw the surprise flicker in her expression. Her smug smile faltered, replaced by confusion. She had no idea what was coming. "Emma," my father said, standing up. His voice was warm, but there was a hint of concern in his eyes. "I didn't expect you until later. Is everything okay?" "Actually, Dad," I said, my voice calm but firm. "We need to talk." I reached into my bag and pulled out the file Mr. Lawson had sent over. I placed it on the coffee table in front of my father. The documents inside were the proof Claire had never expected me to have. "Yesterday, Claire called me," I said, my eyes never leaving hers. "She said she emptied the trust fund and gave everything to Olivia." "I thought you should see exactly what happened." Claire's face went pale as she read the documents. Her composure, which had been so carefully crafted, began to crack. "I was just trying to help Olivia," she said, her voice shaky now, but still trying to maintain the same twisted logic she always had. "I didn't let her finish. Every attempt you made to access the account is documented," I said, my voice steady, not a hint of emotion betraying me. "Every call, every forged signature, every manipulation, it's all here. And the money is still there, safe and untouched." Claire's eyes widened, and she stammered, You set me up." "No," I said, the weight of years of frustration finally releasing. "I protected what was mine. Just like my mom taught me." My father, who had been reading through the documents in stunned silence, finally spoke. His voice was low, barely a whisper. "What did you do, Claire?" I could feel the shift in the room. The years of tension finally coming to a head. My father's shock, his confusion, and the pain in his eyes, it all hit me at once. He had never seen Claire for what she truly was. But now, it was all laid out before him. The web of lies, the deceit, the manipulation. Claire tried to deny it, but her words were weak. "I was just trying to make things fair," she insisted, her voice trembling. "Olivia needed it more than Emma. I cut her off, my voice hardening. "Enough. This wasn't about fairness. This was about you trying to steal from me. And you almost succeeded." I turned to my father, who had now stopped reading, his hands shaking as he looked at me. His face was pale, his eyes filled with disbelief. "I'm sorry you had to find out this way. But you needed to know the truth," I said softly, my heart aching for him. The silence was deafening as he processed the weight of what was unfolding. And then, without another word, he stood up, his voice trembling but resolute. "I want you out of this house tonight, Claire." Her face twisted in outrage. "You can't be serious," she spat, her voice rising to a shrill pitch. "After everything I've done for this family?" "Done for this family?" my father said, his voice cold but firm. "You tried to steal from my daughter. You forged my signature. You've lied to me for years." Olivia, who had been sitting silently up until this point, suddenly broke into tears, but they were not the usual manipulative tears I had come to expect. This time, she looked genuinely shocked, perhaps realizing the depth of her mother's betrayal. I turned to her, a mixture of pity and frustration flooding through me. "Olivia, you don't get to play the victim here. You were complicit in this. And if you didn't know, that's on your mother." The room fell into an eerie silence as Claire packed up her things, her pride all but shattered. Olivia, still in disbelief, followed her, both of them casting angry glances as they walked out the door. I stood by the window, watching them leave, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. The same window I used to stare out of as a child, waiting for my mother to come home, now seemed like the perfect metaphor for how far I had come. For the first time in years, I felt free from Claire's manipulations, free from the constant weight of guilt and fear she had placed on me. But more importantly, I had taken control. The truth was finally out, and nothing would ever be the same again. The days that followed were filled with a quiet sense of finality. Claire was gone, and with her, the heavy cloud that had loomed over me for so long. My father and I began to rebuild the connection we had lost during the years of Claire's manipulation. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. We spent long hours talking, about the past, about my mother, about the ways I had been hurt, and the ways I had tried to heal. My father admitted that he had failed me, that he had been blind to the truth because he had been so desperate to hold on to the family he thought we could be. And in doing so, he had let Claire manipulate us both. I should have seen it sooner, he said one evening as we sat together in the kitchen, the same kitchen where my mother used to help me with my homework. His voice was thick with regret. But there was also something else, hope. We had both learned the hard way. But we had come out the other side stronger. I smiled softly, placing my hand on his. We both made mistakes, Dad, but we're here now. We'll make things right. In the months that followed, my life began to take on a new rhythm. The trust fund, which had been the source of so much pain, became the foundation of something bigger, a consulting firm I had always dreamed of starting. With the financial backing from the trust, I was able to take the leap, turning my vision into a reality. My mother had always believed in me, even when I didn't believe in myself. And now, I was proving to the world, and to myself, that I could do this. Mr. Lawson, who had been my mother's lawyer, was the one to help me get started. He was always a steady presence, and I could almost hear my mother's voice in the way he spoke about business, about taking risks and trusting in my own abilities. She was right about you, he told me one day, after we closed our first big deal. You've got her business sense, Emma, and your father's heart. Those words stuck with me. They were a reminder of everything my mother had taught me, everything she had sacrificed to build her life, and everything she had left for me. The office became my second home. I hired a small team, including Sarah, a brilliant analyst who reminded me so much of my mother, driven, determined, always pushing for more. As the business grew, so did my confidence. Every success, every new client, every milestone I reached was a testament to the strength my mother had instilled in me. The trust fund wasn't just money, it was the freedom to build something of my own. Just as she had. One evening, my father stopped by the office. A rare occasion. He had been spending his days volunteering at a grief counseling center, helping other families navigate loss without losing themselves. He had found a new purpose, and it was beautiful to see him start to heal in his own way. We sat together, sharing a quiet lunch as we talked about the future. Your mom used to say you were like a diamond, he said, smiling softly. Pressure just made you stronger. I chuckled, thinking of my mother's words. I think she knew I'd need to hear that someday. My father smiled, his eyes bright with pride. She would have been proud of you. Emma, I'm proud of you. The legal proceedings with Claire moved quickly after that. She faced charges of attempted fraud and financial exploitation, though she tried to claim she was just trying to level the playing field between Olivia and me. But the evidence was overwhelming. Every forged signature, every falsified document, every calculated move she made to steal from me, it was all laid bare. Olivia reached out to me after everything was over. She apologized, though I wasn't sure I fully believed her. She had spent years believing her mother's twisted version of events, and I wasn't sure how long it would take for her to truly understand what had happened. But I listened, and I forgave her, because I knew she was struggling with the truth just as much as I had. The business continued to grow. We expanded to 3 cities, helping pharmaceutical companies streamline their operations, just like my mom used to. I could feel her presence in every decision I made, in every step I took toward building my future. And when I looked back at everything, all the years of pain, the manipulation, the lies, I saw it for what it was, a lesson. My mother had taught me to be prepared, to never back down when something mattered. She had taught me that true strength wasn't about being tough, it was about being patient. About waiting for the right moment to fight for what was yours. In my office, I kept a framed letter from my mother, one she had written to me just weeks before she passed. It was a simple letter, but it was everything. Trust yourself, she had written. You're stronger than you know, smarter than they give you credit for, and capable of anything you set your mind to. Her words were my mantra, my daily reminder of who I was and where I came from. I had taken her legacy and turned it into something that mattered. Something that would live on long after I was gone. In the years that followed, my father retired completely, But he still came by the office to visit, offering advice when I needed it, sharing stories about my mom that had been locked away for so long. Together, we were building something new, something that would honor her memory. And finally, something that was ours. And every time I visited the old house where I grew up, I could feel her presence. My dad had kept the house. But it was different now, repainted, rearranged, but still holding the memories of all we had lost. In her old office, which he had turned into a library, I found her collection of business books. Inside one of them, there was a note she had written about me. A note about her hope that one day, I would run the company. I never got the chance to do that with her. But I was building something of my own now. And every decision I made, every step I took, carried the echoes of her wisdom. The trust fund she left me was never just about money. It was about believing in myself. About standing my ground when others tried to take what was mine. Claire's betrayal had been the catalyst for everything that came after. And as much as it had hurt, it had also been the lesson I needed. Sometimes, life tests you in ways you never expect. But I had learned that even in the hardest moments, there's always a way to rise above. And I had done just that. So, Emma's journey has come to an end. But her story serves as a powerful reminder of inner strength and resilience. If you've felt the deep emotions and valuable lessons throughout this tale, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on our future videos. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video to support us in bringing more inspiring content your way. Thank you for watching and being a part of this journey with us.